Imagine waking up one morning in the branches of a tree. It's pre-dawn, early morning, and in the distance you can hear the ocean lapping against the shore. The sun rises, and out of habit you look down at your watch. Except it's broken. And then you remember that time doesn't actually matter anymore. This is the story of Margaret Atwood's Oryx and Crake, a post-apocalyptic type novel that's set in the distant future after the fall of humanity. The story is told from the perspective of Snowman, who I imagine looks something like a Grecian caveman wearing a bedsheet in place of his toga. As far as Snowman knows, he's the only survivor of the disease that wiped out his civilization. But before this disease reshaped the world, Snowman was called Jimmy. As Jimmy, he made advertisements for various pills and products, including the one that was used to distribute the world-ending disease, the Bliss Plus pill. We learn this in a series of Snowman's flashbacks, along with the fact that Jimmy was best friends with the enigmatic Crake. Crake just so happens to also be the super genius who invented the Bliss Plus pill and the disease inside. Although readers don't learn how he did it until later on in the novel, Atwood actually reveals pretty early on that Crake destroyed humanity. But for the most part, it isn't the how that readers are concerned with. It's the why. Why did Crake destroy humanity? What did he hope to gain from this? We won't be answering that question. We aren't ready to answer that question because, like most readers, we've neglected to answer a more fundamental one first. What was Crake's goal? I mean his real goal, because contrary to what the novel would have you believe, it may not have been to destroy humanity. Instead, Crake's goal may have been to reinvent humanity. What we learn about the world that Crake destroyed isn't exactly positive. Large, privately owned companies control pretty much everything from food and medicine to education and housing. The family units of the company employees live inside these gated-in communities called compounds, where they have pretty much everything they could ever ask for, and no reason to leave. Not that they would ever want to, because the companies that control these compounds treat the people that live on the outside like poor, uneducated barbarians. Kind of like Google, but more evil. Because their parents are company employees, Jimmy and Crake grew up inside of these compounds and, in fact, met within the compound owned by a company called Healthwiser. Partway through the novel, we learn that Crake's father was actually killed by higher-ups at Healthwiser because he knew too much. As it turns out, the company not only cures the diseases that are plaguing the world, they also distribute them in the form of vitamins so that they can have a constant source of profits. While it seems like the murder of his father is enough of a reason for a madman like Crake to commit mass genocide, the actual reason why he did it is because he wanted to eradicate the kind of greed and corruption that led Healthwiser to do what they did. But why does Crake want to end this greed so badly? What's in it for him? Well, it's kind of like cleaning the slate. He wants this world without greed or corruption, without capitalism, so that his creation can thrive. And what is his creation, you ask? The Crakers. The Quakers are a human substitute, kind of like Splenda is for sugar. In order to prevent some of the major issues that Humanity 1.0 ran into, like war, overpopulation, and climate change, Crake genetically modified the Quakers to have some unusual traits. For instance, he splices baboon genes into their DNA so that they only have a mating cycle of one pregnancy for every 3 years. This keeps the population at a minimum and helps prevent problems like food scarcity that come from having a large population like Humanity 1.0 did. And this is just one of the many, many traits that Crake programmed into them to help the Quakers survive on their own. But Crake also tries to remove things from the Quakers that he believes are responsible for humanity's deterioration. Namely, art and religion. Crake even goes so far as to say things like, "Watch out for art. As soon as they start doing art, we're in trouble." Crake has also gone on record to say that art is pretty meaningless, leaving the reader wondering how it can be dangerous as well. The answer lies in what art is at its core: symbolic thought. Because art is not an object itself, it is a representation of an object, or an idea, or a concept. As John Green often says on his channel, The Vlogbrothers, this is not a pipe. This is just a representation of a pipe. Just like this is a representation of religion. In Crake's mind, religion leads to the downfall of everything. It is, after all, history's leading cause of war and today's leading cause of hate. Crake fears that religion will divide the Quakers somehow and lead them to destroy themselves in a fashion similar to the way that Humanity 1.0 did. But that makes Crake's choice to leave Jimmy as the one in charge all the more confusing. Why would Crake choose Jimmy, the only person he knows that genuinely values art and religion? I mean, Jimmy's even gone so far as to say, "When any civilization is dust and ashes, art is all that's left over. Images, words, music, imaginative structures, meaning, human meaning, is defined by them." It is the essence of humanity, if you will. Hold on to that thought. This is why it seems so bizarre that Crake chose Jimmy instead of a scientist. It's out of character, contradictory. Unless, of course, somewhere between this statement and his choice to make Jimmy the caretaker of the Quakers, he had a change of heart. This change of heart comes in the form of Oryx is the titular love interest of both Jimmy and Crake, but her inclusion in a story is completely unnecessary. The story as a whole probably would have been pretty much the same with or without her. Except without her, Crake probably would have killed Jimmy. It's worth noting that I've introduced Oryx as both Jimmy and Crake's love interest, but if you've read the novel, you'll probably remember that young Crake doesn't really believe in love. He finds it frivolous, a waste of time, and even dangerous. But then we get to the part of the novel aptly named Crake in Love, and his tune changes. He even asks Jimmy in the next section of the novel if he would kill someone he loved to spare them pain. Presumably he's talking about Oryx and his plan to kill her when the Bliss Plus pill disease starts spreading. Ultimately, falling in love with Oryx is what changes Crake's mind. Although he still sees the capitalism-run world as too corrupt to spare, he now sees the value of the humanities. In other words, he finds art, religion, and love as part of the essence of humanity. See? Told you that would be important. By the end of the novel, Crake's goal has become to not just simply wipe the slate clean of Humanity 1.0's mistakes, but to turn the Quakers into a sort of Humanity 2.0. Humanity 2.0 has some upgrades, but at its core, it's basically the same. Just like Humanity 1.0, its essence is symbolic thoughts. It is the capacity to dream, to create, and to love, to do those very things which Jimmy says define human meaning. And because Jimmy believes that this is what defines humanity, Crake decides that Jimmy is the best person to lead the Quakers. Crake's overall goal is to restore humanity to a more natural state, where this essence is intact, but many of the other things that led to humanity's downfall are gone. This desire even shows in the way that he names his compound, Rejuvenescence. Like all of the compounds in the novel, Rejuvenescence has something of a double meaning. Its name is the combination of two words. Rejuvenate, which according to Merriam-Webster means to restore to an original or new state, and essence, which means the individual, real, or ultimate nature of a thing, especially as opposed to its existence. 1. The name alludes to the Bliss Plus pill's advertised purpose, which was to restore mankind's health and youth by giving them more libido, in a sense returning humanity back to its natural state, by putting them in a place where they were closer to what they were like when they were young. 2. The name alludes to the actual purpose of the Bliss Plus pill and to the Quaker Project, which are together part of a two-step plan to first rid the Earth of the old version of humanity, and then to replace it with the Quakers, a newer version. In this interpretation, humanity is rejuvenated on a larger scale, and the human species is restored to a more natural state. Most of Humanity 1.0 believes that the first interpretation is the correct one, but as it turns out, they're wrong. Crake intended for the second interpretation to be the correct one, where Quakers replace Humanity 1.0 as the human species of the planet and live in a more natural, early human state. The essential sameness of Humanity 1.0 and the Quakers, the fact that their essences are both symbolic thought, accounts for every out-of-character thing that Crake does near the end of the novel. Yet readers still consider him a madman with a god complex and nothing more. And granted, Crake is egotistical. He displays many of the tendencies that someone with a god complex would. I mean, he fully believes that if he died, Oryx would commit suicide, and if that's not egotistical, I don't know what is. But it's important to remember that there are two sides to every story. We, as readers in high school and in the early years of college, tend to think that if a scholar says that Crake is just an egomaniac with a god complex, they must be right and we must be wrong. The problem with this is that it means we're too worried about being wrong to argue against the popular opinion, and if we don't argue against the popular opinion, we lose many valuable contributions to the argument that other people may never see. Some scholars may think that Crake is just playing God, but I say he was a hero in his own right, if a bit misguided. The original essay I made this argument in was infinitely better because I made the case for something that most people don't think about. Sometimes the best way to write a great essay is to go against the grain, so don't be afraid to do just that. Hey all, I just wanted to give you a heads up and let you know that this is a video that I made for a class project for my English class, which is about environmental dystopias. So this is by no means the video that I promised you a few weeks ago. That one is still coming. But if you want to read the essay that this video was based off of, you can find a link to it in the description below. I hope you guys will read that because I think that it'll give a little bit of insight as to what college writing kind of looks like. I'm by no means perfect at it, and this essay by no means got a perfect score, but I think it might help a little bit if you read it, especially since the next video I'm making is going to be talking about essays, even though I don't think I'm going to include this one in that video. So yeah, if you want to do that, go ahead. It's in the description below. And I will see you guys another time later.